The forgotten roads are filled with terrible monsters. Taking up chase and sending them back to hell, that's in your blood. This week on Schedule for Launch, join me, Zach Walsh, as I talk with Jamie about her game, Medusa's Marauders. Play as a group, with or without a game master, or play alone as you embark with your biker club, Medusa's Marauders, to send the spawn of hell back to where they came from. We talk about designing different types of play, motorcycles, and powerful women. Welcome to Schedule for Launch, a podcast to discover the projects that you may have missed. This week, I am excited to be talking about one of the coolest games I've seen in a really long time, and joining me to talk about that is Jamie. Jamie, thank you so much for coming onto the show this week to talk about Medusa's Marauders.
Thank you so much for having me. I love this show.
I was super excited when you mentioned that a little while ago. I had no idea, and I am such a fan of this game. I know I messaged you on Twitter and I said, like, we're going to get into it because it's one of the coolest spellcrafting systems I've seen. And the core system that you use builds really well off of the themes in Medusa's Marauders. And I'm so excited to talk about this.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So, Jamie, before we really get into it, can you please tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Okay. So, I am a chaos nightmare. No. No, so I got started in TTRPGs like many people with D&D. I actually contributed on one of the bigger like indie projects called Uncaged Anthology.
I remember that.
Yeah, which was all about like reclaiming monsters who are either women or coded in some sort of feminine way. Reclaiming them and giving them new stories, kind of giving them their own stories. So I did writing, editing, and a couple other behind the scenes stuff for volumes 2, 3, and 4. And I did a couple spin-off projects related to that. Then I stopped. I stopped for like a couple years. And my then mother-in-law was asking me about tabletop role-playing games, and I was like, how can I show her what tabletop role-playing games are all about?
Yeah.
And by then I was not interested in Dungeons and Dragons. I was a little burned out on it. So what I did is I made a game just for her.
Okay.
I made a game just for her called Our Hero Neighbors, about community collaboration and cooperation in a small town. And I gave it to her on Hanukkah, and you know, that was sort of like what started it. And yeah,
that's so sweet.
You know, I try.
I've never heard of somebody writing a tabletop game as a gift to teach somebody, but I think that is adorable. I love that.
Yeah, it was also because I was listening to friends at the table at the time, and they were playing Scum and Villainy. I basically made a Forged in the Dark game, but it was a lot more simple, right?
Yeah.
So it was very rules light. You might even say it was a Forged in the Light. Yeah, but so that was, you know, I'm pretty proud of that, and it's in a couple of bundles. So like if you're like listening and you're like, you know, oh, I want to see what that's like. Well, it was in the bundle for racial justice and equality. It might have been in the bundle for Palestinian children.
Okay.
But anyways, it's in a couple bundles, so before you pick it up, like just check it, if you got those bundles.
Yeah, see if you have it already.
Also, I have community copies for people, and I'm not here to, we say ACAB in this house, so I'm not gonna police you. Just take a community copy.
Yeah, that's fair. And that game has a totally different tone from the game we're going to be talking about today, which
Right,
is
almost
Medusa's
polar opposite.
Marauders.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, I fucking love this game. So, can you tell the audience a little bit about what Medusa's Marauders is?
Absolutely. It is biker dyke spell slingers riding on forgotten highways, sending the forces of hell back to where they belong, fighting off the encroachment of, the forces of hell and other, both natural and supernatural forces that are trying to give us all a bad time.
Yeah. It's dark and gritty, and the systems that it is built on complement it so well. And like I need to on air because I've already sung its praise off air, but just kudos to this. It's so well written. I read this one word for word. I know I told you that, but audience, I read this entire thing front to back. Usually when I am reviewing or looking through a copy to ask questions, I'll skim sections. And after reading the intro, I was like, well, I'm in it for the long haul. I sat down and read the entire book in a night. It was wild. It's been a long time since I've done that.
That means a lot coming from you because you have a lot of amazing people on the show, and their games are incredible. I mean, I think every one is a winner. Definitely worth checking out. So for you
Yeah.
to say that about my game is high praise indeed.
So let's get a little bit into that system, though, Jamie. Can you tell the audience what the system is based on and some of the more interesting features that it encompasses?
Oh, absolutely. So it is a driven by harmony game. Driven by Harmony is a system created by Cat McDonald / Peach Garden Games, and it was created for a game called Heroic Chord, which is like a music magic game, all about like combining notes to make magic.
Yeah.
And so what I did with the Driven by Harmony system is I said to myself, okay, I really dig this concept of having pieces of spells that you combine as represented by words. And I said, so how can I make that into something that really feels gritty, right? And so, I toyed around with a couple of different things. And, I started I kind of went through lists of verbs and lists of adjectives and things, and just trying to find the right words to make those combinations. Because what you want to do, right? You might have a spell piece called engulfing. Okay, so now you got to combine engulfing with another spell piece that comes from either the earth itself or something in the environment, right?
Yeah.
So it might be like engulfing bones, for example. and maybe the spell sets your opponent uh, ablaze at the core of their bones, right, from within themselves. Sounds truly horrifying. And that's the kind of stuff I wanted to set up, right? I wanted to set up
Yeah.
those really horrifying, gruesome stuff. And so uh, the game rewards you for making interesting combinations, but then I had a problem because as a forever GM,
Mm-hmm.
I try to make games that don't require a GM.
Yeah.
And Driven by Harmony is definitely requires a GM. So I put it to uh, folks the in the Peach Garden Games Discord. I was like, this is what I want to do. How can I make that work? And somebody else was like, well, maybe you should try using the magic of names uh, by, I believe it's Thomas Manuel,
Mm-hmm. I think that
who
sounds right.
said, yeah, who like created a mosaic strict uh, mechanic for using Ursula K. Le Guin's magic system. And so you don't get spells from the earth. It's not necessarily a given that the earth will give you a spell piece. You have to have a conversation with the earth. Um, and so you go through this conversation asking like, do I have permission? Do you want to be invoked, right? I think is one of the questions. Do you want to be invoked? Am I being selfish? Um, and so you're having this conversation in order to bring out this spell piece from the earth. But once you have it, and it kicks ass.
Yeah. The spell pieces are rad, and when you are going through character creation, you choose a couple, and depending on choices that you make throughout the game, one of those
Right.
choices that you make is the member that you're going to be playing. These are your kind of your archetypes or your classes for Medusa's Marauders. Could we go over a few of them and maybe
Oh,
tell
absolutely.
us? Yeah, they're rad. And could you maybe tell
Yeah.
us some of your favorite things in designing them?
Um, sure. So I like many great game designers, I take the things that I love and I steal them and put them into my stuff, right? Like, you
No,
know,
it's fair.
I mean, stealing is such a strong word, right? But we're basically like, it's a very remix culture here, right? We take the
Mm-hmm.
things that we
Yeah.
love and we put a new spin on them in our own stuff. So I took, for example, the member type Elder Lich, right, was
Yeah.
directly inspired by um, MOBA characters from League of Legends and Heroes of the Storm. One of them is called Thresh, who is like
Yeah.
a ghostly, just nasty motherfucker who who is kind of like a send up of death, like the psychopomp, and also like sort of like characters would it be like Davy Jones kind of thing. So Thresh has chains and hooks and has a very ghostly voice that's creepy. And then the other one was Leoric from Heroes of the Storm, who is um, a undead king type character. And I took those, combined them, and made the Elder Lich, whose design is essentially, if somebody hits you, you hit back harder. That was sort of the design in choosing the spell pieces, and choosing the specialty, right? Each member
Yeah.
type gets a specialty. It's a ridiculously powerful move. But the elder lich is definitely supposed to be able to punish you for picking a fight with them.
The Elder Lich is one that I really like. One of the things that I really like about how you've written these members is the story piece that gives suggestions for, if you're looking to play this kind of character, take a look at this member.
Right. Right.
I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah, I tried to give a little bit of lore, but not too much, and then tell you this member type is for players who want XYZ. And that could be a combination of just like, here are the story beats that you could do with this character, or it might be more practical, like, here are, like, if you're indecisive, right?
Yeah.
Use this member type, because there's a lot of it's very straightforward. Or if you're on the other end and you're like, I can't commit to something that's very specific, so I want something that's customizable, take this member type, right?
Yeah. And you've actually done some really cool stuff with the member types as well. One of the things you had mentioned a little bit earlier was being able to play GM-less as well as solo play. And that kind of helps them nomad a lot too, which is one of the specific member types.
Right. So in motorcycle culture, specifically like motorcycle clubs, and this isn't just outlaw clubs, but like your neighborhood friendly clubs too. There is the concept of a nomad, who is someone who is a member of the club more broadly, but they don't belong to a specific chapter. And so they basically roam from chapter to chapter, helping out the chapters and like doing, various things. It kind of depends on what the club is about, right? So in this case, it's, the nomad is someone who goes from chapter to chapter, kicking hellspawn ass, right? But the nomad is a wanderer, and I wanted that character there because I wanted a member type that really gave people the freedom and empowered them to play solo. And you can of course use the nomad in play with other people, but the nomad is specifically made in mind to empower people to play by themselves.
Yeah. It's a really cool member and archetype that fits into the concept of motorcycle clubs, which this game is clearly steeped in. And reading it, you can tell you have a love for motorcycle clubs in general.
Yeah. Yeah.
How'd you get involved with that, by the way?
So my dad was into motorcycles.
Okay.
And he wasn't like the Harley Davidson, gotta have like this massive loud hog type thing. No, he had like a Suzuki a Suzuki something or another.
Like a sports bike.
Yeah, it was it looked definitely more sports bike. But knowing that he was into motorcycles made me like sort of have that interest in the back of my mind. And then as I got older, then there was Sons of Anarchy. There was the short story Shoggoths in Traffic by Tobias Buckle on LeVar Burton Reads, and I was like, oh shit. And so I I had to do something with that. I went and took a safety course and learned how to ride a motorcycle, and I've been sort of like steeped in motorcycle culture as much as I can be. I live where it's very cold, so there's only like 4, maybe 5 if you're lucky, months that you can ride. But
Yeah, I'm in the same place.
yeah, we make do. We make do.
Yeah. I grew up with my best friend's father was very, very into motorcycles and part of a motorcycle chapter. And I just remember the countless hours that the three of us were in the garage with the bike. So maybe this is scratching a nostalgic itch to me that I didn't realize until right now.
Oh
But
yeah.
I love it. It's so cool. And the bikes in this game are terrifying and rad. You want to talk a little bit about bikes and what they do?
Yeah. So bikes in this game are not just bikes. They are living entities, shall we say? Like, I don't know if we would say living in the sense of like they're not pets, right?
No.
But they are definitely more than just machines. Like for example, the nightmare, it like breathes like a horse when you ride it. And one of the consequences of using the abilities that come with bikes is that the bike might eat someone.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. So, don't fuck around with these bikes. Yeah, these bikes are not playing around. The idea with bikes is that they are supposed to be like an extra resource that you have in addition to just like part of the whole theme of like you are in a motorcycle club. The bikes act as an additional resource that you can tap into. So you get extra spell pieces, you get an extra ability, and those will help you. But if you're going to use them, it's going to cost you something. And oftentimes that is both a flavorful thing and also like a mechanical thing. So for example, the Thanasian Devastator 1312, the consequence for using its abilities is that you start to lose touch with the living. Like you feel dead, right?
Yeah.
And then you also take anguish, which is this system's equivalent of harm or stress. And so yeah, that's sort of how they work.
Yeah. Let's actually talk a little bit about anguish because that is a huge part of this game. It's more so than just a health pool or a harm pool. It's a resource pool as well. And when it gets filled, that doesn't necessarily mean character death. So let's talk a little bit about that design.
Right. So anguish comes from a more traditional health pool in the Driven by Harmony system. But I wanted something that felt more give and take. So when I created anguish, I thought about like, how a common theme in our fantasy stories is like pushing the boundaries of life and death. And I've got a member type that's, an elder lich. So it didn't seem like a stretch to create moves and abilities and specialties that play with the exchange of anguish, um, and also gave me room to design combat around the exchange of anguish, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because when it comes to combat, right, that's where anguish really matters, because you are trying to build a dice pool and you've only got 10 anguish before you either ride off into the sunset for a while, you die, or some other strange thing takes you out of play for the time being.
Yeah.
And it's up to your table to decide, are you going to come back for somehow, or is this you retiring, or are you dead? So there's a lot of freedom there, but you're right. Anguish is a resource, not just health or stress. Um, a lot of the mechanics for the member types give you the freedom to exchange anguish for success in your
Mm-hmm.
rolls, or give you conditions for changing the outcome of a roll.
Yeah.
Um, that's kind of the crux of anguish and what sets it apart from just being a health pool.
It has a lot of little moving parts. It's not crunchy necessarily because it makes a lot of sense when you read the rules. Us talking about it probably doesn't do a whole lot of justice on how you can utilize anguish, because this is one I think you can sit down and read about it and you're like, okay, I get it. It makes a lot of sense. And there's a lot of things that can take your anguish,
Right. Right.
but yeah, it kind of is a very good narrative story beat piece to show the state of your character.
Right. Because anguish doesn't, I mean, one of the reasons why I chose the word anguish, right,
Mm-hmm.
is because that puts it in the hands of the player to decide what anguish is, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be the same thing each time. Anguish could be physical, it could be mental/emotional, it could be something supernatural, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I really wanted to get away from prescriptive language that other systems use to describe what has a negative impact on a player character.
Yeah. Or kind of, it seems like you also wanted to avoid that prescribing a emotion or a state as well.
Yeah, yeah. Because I think players are just so much more, even shy players, I have found, like, my experience is that whatever a player comes up with is oftentimes so much cooler than whatever bullshit I'm on as I'm writing this stuff. So I give suggestions, right? Like if you're
Yeah.
if you're having a brain fart day and you're just trying to get, and you're just like, okay, I gotta do this anguish thing. I give you a list of possible, like, here's what anguish looks like for you, or here's a consequence,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you can use that. But I generally assume that the player is going to want to describe what anguish looks like in that moment.
Yeah. I also find that they are either more narratively fitting. There are times where I'll have a player do something. I'll be like, "Hey, you're being a little harsh on yourself for that." Like,
Right. Yeah.
so we talked about it a second ago too, that you build a dice pool. Medusa's Marauders does use a dice pool system, and it uses it for its encounters. It's a really interesting system. How does the dice pool system work in this game, though?
So you're basically looking at what is it that you're bringing to an encounter, right? This game refers to its combat as encounters as a way of
Mm-hmm.
like acknowledging that there might be things that are not combat, but you might want to play them like combat.
Yeah.
And at the beginning, you're asking yourself, okay, so what am I bringing to this, right? It might be like a certain skill you have, right? It might be a spell. It might be, or you might just be, you know, cocking your shotgun and pulling the trigger, right? It could be any of those things, and each player contributes their thing, spell, ability, whatever. They're all contributing their thing. Then they move on to actually engaging with the encounter. And that's when it really ramps up, because you have, say, let's say you're rolling warfare, right? That's your shooty stabby violence skill, right?
Yeah.
That's your fuck 'em up skill.
Yeah.
So you roll, let's say you're rolling 2 dice because you have 1 point in bold, and you have the skill warfare. So now you're rolling 2 dice. Okay. So if you get a success on both of those, now you have 2 successes. Keep a hold of those successes. Keep track of them, because you're bringing those into the fight, and each person has to decide, okay, am I contributing to the dice pool, or am I going to try and basically advance the goal of defeating this encounter? And you need a certain amount of successes in your dice pool in order to do that.
Yeah.
But then the problem is the encounter might hit back. And if you want to be able to block or deflect or avoid some sort of consequence from the encounter hitting back, you have to use successes from your pool. So it's a constant balancing act between, do I want to deflect this incoming consequence from the encounter, or do I want to just keep hitting it, and hopefully I can hit it enough times that I don't get fucked before before it's down.
Yeah. I think it's a really cool system that really heavily lends to the idea of group play and cooperation. Not to say that you need to be necessarily a team player. Your character can kind of do their own thing. That's what I mean by that. But
Right.
I think it adds to the story flow of this, and it inspires really good storytelling. One of the things that really lends to that is edge successes.
Yes.
Can you talk about the edge success? Because I thought this was a rad system.
In many games, whether it be Powered by the Apocalypse, Forged in the Dark, or even, D&D and D&D clones, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you get a 1, that's pretty bad. That's usually going to have some absolutely bad consequence for the player character. But in Driven by Harmony, rolling a 1 means you get an edge success, which means you still get what you want, but something bad happens in the process. And I leave that up to the players to decide what that looks like, right? It could be, I think of edge successes in media, right? So it's spoilers for The Wrath of Khan if you haven't seen this 40-year-old movie, but, this is Spock managing to contain the radiation and stop the ship from blowing up, right? But Spock dies, right? This is Spock giving everything to save. He succeeds, but he also dies. Now, you don't have to die just because you got an edge success, but it's sort of that idea of it costs this was a Pyrrhic victory.
Mm-hmm. It's like one of the other ones that was kind of thought up. I think I saw it on a forum talking about this. Was using, like, you're gonna hit with your shotgun shell, but it's your last shell. So after the encounter, that's like you got no more shots left in you.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And that's something that's just involved in all the systems games. Like, that's a core part of this system, isn't it?
Right. That's a core part of Driven by Harmony. I might have leaned into it really hard, but that's something that's a part of this system, which I think is really great. Like, it's a unique way to fail forward.
Yeah. On top of designing a whole armada of things to kill, there are forces in nature, consequence tables, and there's a lot more to come. Medusa's Marauders is itch funding right now. What are some of the things that you're hoping to add to the game?
Really sick ass art.
Yep.
I mean,
understandable.
You can go to the game page and see, like, there's a little, there's that little preview image, and it's cool. It's cool. But I would really like you to be able to look at the bikes, right?
Yeah.
I would like you to see these bikes in all their disgusting, scary, vicious detail. And I want there to be, like, really cool layout, right? If you read the game book, I styled the section for the bikes specifically written like it was ad copy from the back of a magazine.
That's exactly the feeling I got.
Great, because that's what I was going for. And so,
especially when I read the meat rocket, I was like, ew. I love it, but
Yep. That's what I was going for. I wanted you to feel that. Yeah. But I would love for there to be layout that makes it look like, you turn to the bikes and suddenly you're looking at the back of a magazine, right? Like, with all the ads and stuff. So those are the kinds of things that I'm going for. I really want the book to look the way the game feels.
Yeah.
So that's, like, the big thing. I'm also really wanting to do, like, an audiobook version of the game book. Because I saw that, like, Tachyon Squadron did that. And I thought that was really, really, like, a neat accessibility type thing. And also just a new way to approach game book writing.
Yeah.
If you make it knowing that you might convert it into an audiobook, do you write things differently? Yeah, you bet your ass you do write things differently. And so I really want this to be as accessible as possible. And I don't have all the expertise needed to make that happen. So I want to pay people to, help me make that happen, to make the game book as accessible as possible.
I think that would be really cool. At the end of the day, Medusa's Marauders is a game all about telling stories about powerful women. I think this game nails it. It's unique. There's so much content already, and I think that some people are really gonna love it. That being said, we have talked that this is not a game for everybody, and you have really graciously put in at the beginning some other games that help for that, like to help guide people to games that are similar to Medusa's Marauders but different theming. Who would you say this game is for, though?
I would say it's for people who watched Terminator Dark Fate and thought, damn, I want to be Linda Hamilton, or I want to be Mackenzie Davis, right? Like, I want to be those women, right? Or you watched fucking Mad Max Fury Road and you were like, Furiosa is my shit. Uh, like if that's you, right? If you watch this shit and you're like, fuck me up, sign me up. I'm there for it. This is the game. This is the game for you, right?
Uh, that's actually a really good way to put it. I get that.
Yeah.
Jamie, we're actually Jamie, we're starting to run out of time here, but I want to ask you the two questions that come up at the end of every single one of these episodes. What advice
Okay.
can you give to people wanting to make their own game, but they don't know where to start?
All right. This is gonna be a little deja vu. Uh, follow your dopamine. Um, if you see something that gets you excited, uh, look at what they did and just try to like start by just imitating it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you'll find things that like, oh, I kind of want to tweak this thing. Okay, tweak that. Oh, I wonder if I could do this. Okay, do that thing. And the more you do that, the more you're going to start coming up with your own shit that is going to be awesome, right? And as long as you're excited about it, then that's going to take you so far, so much further than any like any bullshit advice that I could write in a blog entry, right?
Yeah, it really will. It will. Well, that's good. It's like, it's always great advice. If you're happy with your project, you're going to work on it more. That's just the best way to go
Right.
about it.
Right. Right. Follow the shit that makes you excited and do
Exactly.
that.
Because it probably makes somebody else excited as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jamie, where can people find out more about you and Medusa's Marauders? Also, feel free to plug your other stuff as well. I know that you have your podcast and stuff, so make sure you drop those here too.
Okay. Um so you can find me on Twitter at Therablast Games. And that's just shortened. That's Therapeutic Blasphemy Games shortened because Twitter does not let you have a long ass handle.
No.
So it's Therablast Games on Twitter, and you can find the game at Therapeutic Blasphemy Games.itch.io, and it is itch funding. So what you get is you get the book, and as I make improvements to it, you'll get a new file to download. So just know that that's kind of how that works.
Mm-hmm.
I also do a podcast for around mental health called Quiet Power. It's all about building up emotional resilience, and being able to chill out. Right, I speak in a
Yeah.
very chill voice. I don't use foul language, except for there's one episode segment where I do use foul language, but I'm very chill on this podcast, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just it's like 10 to 15-minute episodes where you just get to take a second and chill, right? It's your
Yeah.
timeout. It's your moment while smoking a cigarette, drinking your coffee in the morning or whatever it is that you do. Just take that moment to chill and maybe even learn something as you're going about your day about how to get through the day just a little easier.
Yeah. It's also very good and well put together, so I highly recommend it.
Thank you. Yeah, so you can check that out. That's also on Twitter and Facebook, actually.
Oh,
Quiet Power Pod. If you put that in Twitter, you'll find auto-generated links to the podcast episodes, and you can find it on Facebook, where I where I do little breakdowns of what each episode is about. And it's on most major podcasting apps, except maybe Pandora, because they won't get back to me.
I totally get that. Don't worry. As always, audience, all those links are going to be down in the description below. If you think Medusa's Marauders is for you, highly recommend it. Super, super well written. Incredibly. I'm excited to play it. I'll just put it that. I'm excited to get into a little bit less of a whirlwind time and try this game out. So, Jamie, thank you so much for joining me on the show this week. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me. I, as a fan of the show, I'm excited to be on it.
Well, I loved having you on. It was great. Audience, thank you for listening. Jamie and Medusa's Marauders, they are scheduled for launch, and you can already go pick up that itch-funded version, so they're partially launched right now. Go get it. Take care of yourselves. Have a good night, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye. Thank you so much to Jamie for joining me on the show this week. I really did mean it when I said that this is one of the coolest games I have gotten a chance to look over in a long time. It's really visceral and written in such a unique way. I love it. I adore it. So make sure you go and give Jamie a hand. Itch fund this thing. It's great. Also, just wanted to say a mic quality thing. I know some of you may have noticed that tin noise, but if you're listening to this, I think I fixed it. It might be in the next couple episodes. Not sure yet. We haven't edited them. Also, hey listeners, Goblin Game Jam started on Sunday. If you aren't in there yet, you should join us. I've been really working hard on the things I'm trying to punch out while I'm trying to do some more podcast stuff for you. Speaking of which, if you liked what you heard and you want to hear more, why not tell someone about it on the internet? Word of mouth is the best way to help us grow. And growing's good. Next week, I have the pleasure of sharing a conversation I had with Danny about Dungeons with Plumbing. I think you're all going to really enjoy it. Until next time, take care. I'll see ya.